about 3 hours when I practice. Probably 3-4 times a week. So, a lot. Between 20 and 30 games a day, 5 days a week for about 5 years. And then I backed it down to about 15 to 20 games a day until I got too old to do that.
I was fortunate. I did most of my practice in college. We had 8 lanes on campus and had access to it almost around the clock. So there would be hour to 2 hour sessions, sometimes 2-3 times a day, depending on class work. So 4 years of college, I got a lot of work.
For me, it was sometimes it would be a half a day, sometimes it would be a full day. I was always one that liked to get challenged. I didn't like to get defeated by a lane condition. I would just stay until I figured it out, or until I had a good grasp on it.
When I first went on tour, I basically got by on my ability. And then in 1993, I went 0 for 17 the first part of the year. And I decided that if I didn't want to live in a box under the bridge down by the river, that I was going to have to practice. And I took my cue from a guy like Doug and a guy like Tommy DeLutz. And every time I went to Bowling Center when the tour was not running its tournament, and even Joe later on, they were always in there practicing, and I decided I needed to do the same thing. So I took it upon myself to practice about 5 or 6 days a week, about 2 hours a day, 2 to 3 hours a day, and practice things I was not good at, because I already was good at one thing. I had to make myself good at 3 or 4 different things. And Joe, you need to answer the question about your favorite pattern.
My favorite pattern. As far as favorite pattern, I usually answer that by saying I don't have a favorite pattern. And the reason being is that if you have a favorite, then that also means that you have some that you don't like. And we're required to bowl on all of them. So I try not to have a favorite. I do kind of prefer when the lane's a little harder and it takes the payment on shot making. So that would probably be my favorite. As far as practicing, my story is that when I was in the 10th grade in high school, I read an article by Leanne Barrett, who's now Leanne Volsenberg, just won the U.S. Women's Open. And she talked about how when she would practice, she always felt like she would work on her game, and she didn't go and work on the same things a day later or within a certain time frame, then all that practice from that day was wasted. So I kind of took that advice, and I set myself on a schedule where I never went more than 1 day without having some sort of a practice or league or a tournament. So if I went into practice on a Monday and I couldn't practice on Tuesday, I'd make sure to get on the lanes on Wednesday. And then I tried to keep that schedule throughout the course of my career. And it happened at the bowling center where I lived, and actually ended up working during high school. Had a nice special from 4 to 6 in the afternoon, where the bowling was a little cheaper. So every day in the afternoons after school, I'd go in and practice, and I bowl my leagues and tournaments on the weekends.
Well, I like all of them. I practiced quite a bit growing up, and father was my coach, and he always told me that when you practice, you want to practice with a purpose. And a lot of, like the guys are saying, there's things you want to work on. And I got to the point that there's just so long that during practice, so if I felt like I wasn't getting anything out of it, I'd stop. Okay, we're out here thing, and if I just go out and start throwing shots without a reason why I'm throwing or a certain skill I'm working on, I wasn't really getting anything out of it. So I was just trying to make the most of the time that I'm on the lanes, rather than playing or practicing long every day. Although there were days that I would practice quite a bit. But you know, there's sometimes you're just mentally ready to accept things that you do, and other days you're just not going to have it. I just didn't want to get in the habit of practicing the wrong things, so that's why I say I just kind of use my own judgment. If there's days you just go out there and start throwing, and it's like, you know, what am I doing? So I would use kind of that advice to go by is, you know, when you're out there, you're working on things. And even in this camp, you know, we talk from our experience, we've been bowling professionally. But what we're trying to do here is to build, you know, repetition, something to be consistent, and so you can realize what your mistakes are as you make them. You don't want to make adjustments and not know why. So if we can build good foundation and build from that way we can really know what adjustments you need to make at what time. Okay?